Welcome back. And let me quickly thank Linda Jen again, recurring. This is so much appreciated. You guys who have figured out to sustain the efforts we're putting in here by regular contributions. So thank you, Linda Jen. Thank everyone for all time, from all through the past that have done the same thing, and for all your subscribing, sharing, and all that. Comments, really appreciated. Just keep them coming, and I'll try to keep responding, and especially to the comment. I'll try to keep responding in a useful way and make it worth your while. So we got to get on to this. I'm on my my students up here are on my hilltop, actually banging logs up, building logs. I don't know, we're at 5 or 6 levels now, and trucking. So I'd say I'm in a rush to get back to them, and I technically am. I'm going to try to bring them lunch. But in the meantime, I better just get moving on this. This is going to be a two-part thing if it works out well. I've asked Ilya to actually come on with me, and I don't know if it'll be his face or in a Zoom or just his voice, but it'll be a Zoom format where we can actually talk to each other, because I want to answer this question the best I can today, and then have him be able to come back and say, no, it's not quite what I meant, or whatever. Do you see what I'm saying? Ilya, when you see this, maybe you can think about whether or not we should be looking at what you're working on, but that's not necessary. Unless you have some spot where you some start of some sort where you can show us what your difficulty is. Here's the question, and I might just as well jump into the points as he talks. And I take that back. It's better to read through it first and then maybe come back and read it again and talk through the points. So let me try to do it that way. Ilya says, while drawing, I'm trying to really work on the ensemble at all times, but still have a piecemealish feeling, as even the basic stuff like height, width are taking time and effort. Like you get those on the paper, you add stuff in between, and the whole thing is off. Welcome to the club. I don't quite understand the eyeballing game. Are we constantly jumping between the points, and that gets us to the ensemble? Or should we make an effort to relaxed effort, the eyes, and just work on the big piece, comparing points without zooming on them? Are there some general tips on looking? Hope you see what I mean. And that's where words sort of don't quite do the job. But I do believe, when you're working the way I'm trying to suggest you work, I usually do have a pretty good idea what you mean. But let's just go back to the beginning. Interesting arrangement of the word while there, isn't it? The letters. Hope I didn't do that to you, Ilya. All right. While I'm trying to really work on the ensemble at all times, but still have a piecemealish feeling, as even the basic stuff like height and width are taking time and effort. Like you get those on the paper, you add stuff in between, and the whole thing is off. Yeah. So our effort basically is to float points, and then follow up with the idea of saying, well, if this is true and that's true and that's true with these floating points, then when I put this together, things should work out. So when you add more data in between, say 2 points on a line, I'll show you what I mean. So with a picture in a minute. Well, maybe I should even do it now. So let's just go to a shot. My computer's acting funny. All right, that'll work. There we go. So what we're talking about is the floating mentality. So we always set a top and base point, some key points to establish the top and bottom. And what I am suggesting is that you choose those points, plan never to move them, because too many things are already being based on them. Let me give you an example. For example, if you say this and this won't change, you put this in the right place, but then suddenly decide that you're going to move this up or that down, that's going to change this. And every other thing that you're related to those 2 points, and everything that you put down should be related to those 2 points, because those are the absolutes. Those are the things that are are chosen and maintained. Okay. All right. So, but then what happens, and this is kind of like the point of our way of working, you set up points, you discuss it a little bit, then you bring enough representation of the look of that area to see whether you're right or not. So in a second or two, after finding out, say, a line down here, you might have searched it out like this, you'll bring the values to it and produce the look of nature at this edge. And that'll require you to pull together some of the darks and all that sort of stuff. But all of a sudden you have this look. Now does it appear, and this one here with that look, now does it appear to be visually, literally, like, as Meldrum would say, transferable? Does it look like it would be, does it just configure in exactly the same way if you were able to transfer the original over on top of it? You see what I mean? Or vice versa. But what does happen, though, is you set up this point. Now, this isn't a great point, so it behooved us to go over and talk about this and this in terms of trying to establish the top better. But even when you do it, you want to bring your values to bear if you're working quickly from line into value so that the look of nature is right up here, and you'll be able to see this entire width as it relates to this height, which is the given. So, but there's a certain amount of follow-through that has to be there for it to even look right. And so if you just maintain the idea, Ilya, that the follow-through is the evidence that you were right, or it's the impetus to rethink first marks. But the reason we use marks and points and that sort of thing is because they're so minimal, and they're easy to move. But you do have to learn to see point angle and all that sort of stuff. I mean, this width here, you have to be able to articulate this width with the look of nature so it feels like itself and have it look right, feel right to the top and bottom if you're using my model, which is use your eyes. There are ways to check heights to widths, modest ways like viewfinders and things like that aren't great, but they will keep you from egregious problems. There are ways to check other players, like the location of this point from top to bottom. Just literally put 1 inch on a ruler and see how many and a half it comes to when it touches on your given point up here. Those are ways to check those things, to see how your eyes are doing. But get used to letting your eyes find it and keep questioning until when you think you've really got it, take a measurement like that and have some good fun. But most of what I'm trying to do is get out some stuff that looks plausible in their relationships, point angle sort of relationships, and whatever points make boxes, and then bring more data to bear to see how you did. So that's the most fundamental thing. It's the system. So don't be feeling bad when your follow-up just shows you that you were wrong. That's what you were looking for it to do, right? But your follow-up doesn't want or even the time you're spending on these little points shouldn't be such that and that's why trial and error is so valuable. These things shouldn't be so much that you're torturing yourself and spending inordinate amounts of time on something that is by nature a speculation in the first place, right? You're speculating on whether this is going to work out. The evidence is when you then pull the data together to finish massing it out, that it isn't quite right. Okay? And we get there quite fast because we're drawing it the way it looks and massing quickly. So you can see already there's that look of the finish, the softer edge over here and the sharper edge over here. There's some sort of an element of the look of the finish in the lay-in. Now, this is multiple hours later, this drawing, and I don't know how many hours later. It might have been as many as 14. I don't know. Did this for a demonstration way back, a video demonstration that actually, where I lost the video, where the tape was destroyed. Didn't work. I probably could have gotten an expert to work it out, but in any case, you can see the same thing is happening here. There's the expression of an idea like this one, the beauty of that, the look of that, and there's whatever happens, how it has to tie into the area, and then all the other things that relate to it, how they feel to it, and making those, bring them into the game, and then doing everything that pulls together. Oh, well, you'll see it in a different one too. That's just a hint of it. So let me get back to the start, to the first part of this question. To the second part. But you see what I mean, that when you add stuff in between and the whole thing is off, good, fine, now you know. But you do have to get the skill of floating points and grasping in nature those points and their relationships, the abstraction, the configuration that they make, the constellation, if you like, of those points. If it's 2 points, they already have an angle and distance between them in relation to something else. The angle is relation to vertical. And who knows what the distance is if it's top and bottom. The distance is a pick distance, and you'll have to study it. Yeah. So I don't quite understand the eyeballing game. What are we constantly jumping between the points? And that gets us to the ensemble. So I think that is the explanation of it. And this is where you're going to have to come in, Ilya, next week. And we'll make a set out of this one and see how it works. I'm trying to make this available to other people so they can do the same thing, and you're being a willing victim. I think people know you from our live videos, and you've sent questions in before, so I think it'd be fun to get guys in the room talking directly to me, responding to these things, saying what they're thinking or what they're observing, is a follow-up, and that which leads them to more follow-up. So I don't quite understand the eyeballing game. Are we constantly jumping between the points? And that gets us to the ensemble. And of course, that's true, right? We're setting up a handful of points. Now, I'm not expecting you to set up 20 points. That would be absurd, obscene. But the top and bottom is just 2 points. Get a third point. As soon as you have a third point, what you're trying to do is configure it so that it relates well to the first two. By the time you get 8 points out there and you haven't done that, with each one of them coming back to the first ones, and to the best efforts of the previous, even the points, by the way, when you had a third and fourth point, they should help you to see whether your first 2 points were right? So have that in mind, that even in the point mode that's happening. But I'm not looking for you to get lots of points out there without then, as we show in that previous drawing, without then having some level of the look of nature coming into play, so you can get that sense of nature equals nature, not just an abstraction called line over here, but where we're looking at a thing in life, have it look enough like it so that it begins to, in our imagination or in our sense of things, begins to be that, right? And that's the idea of bringing more finish into the start. Okay, or should we make an effort to relaxed effort, the eyes, and just work on the big piece, comparing points without zooming on them? So no, the answer to that is, at the beginning, yes, when you're just in a mode for a bit. But even when you're drawing a point, just to be a point, articulate it so you really think it looks like nature. Memorize it, as Sargent would say. Memorize the longest line you can that'll hold that point, right? When you get to the corner of something, it could be the corner of my thumb or something like that. When you get to the corner of something, draw right through that. Don't draw up to it. Don't hack up to it. Draw right through it. So memorize that and draw right through it. And then that's what you're going to move back and forth, and an improved version of that each time you see it, drawing it better. Or should we make an effort to relax the eyes and just work on the big piece? But you are, of course, always only working on the big piece. You do top and bottom, and you immediately write them to each other, seen big, but there are only 2 points so far. Now, that's an inevitable, right? You can't do 40 points at once. You wouldn't want to. But to take the 2 points and make sure they're right in every way to each other is something I found remarkably useful. And I wouldn't limit that to any aspect of the visual world. Value contrast should be right to each other, edge should be right to each other, angle, distance, and to whatever extent they have size, the size is, that sort of thing, everything. And that gets you into the unity model, right? But you're always working from the unity, the general impression model. And so it's both and, right? So you're articulating them, as it were, zooming in on them. Of course, the zooming's content isn't an isolated thing like you're doing a sight size of this and a sight size of that. You're drawing this as well as you can, and then you're writing that look of nature to each other right away. So zoom, have a party, so to speak. Be aware of what it is to the ensemble, but draw it articulately as it is and get it right. So if you're looking at it, it's right, and when you're looking at it to others, it's right. Okay, and that's just a bit of a balancing act. Everything is negotiable, right? I mean, we aren't matching, as Degas said, we're painting the sun with the yolk of an egg. And that's true of other aspects of painting as well. All right. Are there some general tips on looking? Yeah, let me think about that as we look at pictures. Okay, we just have a few to look at. Computer's acting funny today. It doesn't want to adjust. It wants me to roll it up. I'm looking at Mary Menifee's, some of her starts from some of our workshops, or maybe not even. But I'm going to show you this idea here. Here it is right here, where she's spotted around a bunch of color, and then she started articulating. She would have done a top and bottom or a left and right or something, but it looks like top and bottom. and she would have articulated this at some reasonable level, so they'd begin to feel like nature. They have the light, they have the edge, they have the color relationships, the value relationships. And but then what happens is, as you get around a bit, you find you can just mass out a ways, pulling a bunch of stuff together. And so there's that process of what I call sending out the scout, or which would be whatever it is you're using, say for the top, sending out this scout, and then massing until they talk to each other, and then consolidating as much as you can, and put the time to get into pulling them together. So there's a sending out, a projecting of a look of an area, which includes location and all that sort of stuff, everything I've talked about. And then there is the consolidation, or the pulling together, but not anything. You're not pulling anything together that you haven't already thought about spatially. Okay. So we are getting around. This is our version of drawing, is drawing points, drawing readers, drawing in the visual order, meaning the top guys as much as possible, and the guys, of course, that are useful to establish big proportions and dramatic angles and stuff like that. Always the look of nature at spots. But you can see that, like in this one, you can see areas where she's articulated this, and then she was able to pull this all together with this. So she articulated this, and then blah, blah, blah. That can all be pulled together into unity. Then you look and you say, how have I done? Well, let's put it that way. So she had this, she has this, and then she has this. And you can then see how all this stuff sort of hangs together. She didn't get invested in doing the littleness of this yet, though, right? Because she's really trying to certify that these are really great to each other. And you see how beautifully they set up light effects there. And they're right relationally to each other, the power of this to this to this, the edge relationships. And the same thing is true, of course, of this out here. So you're doing this thing, and you're looking for the chance to pull it together, to have a look at the big impression. And of course, by the time you get around and around, there's going to be several of these. You'll be looking at this spot to this spot to this spot as the lights go. These are all things that, as you do them, they verify that you're on the right track, or they give you leads on how to make it better, and then you go forward again. Okay. That review process is just massively important for you. So I don't know if this is working for you, again, Ilya. So when you get back to me, and if we can get together on this, I think people might have a lot of fun with it. I'll try to save these images if we want to go back to these, but if you in the meantime want to maybe give us one of your or two of your own, that would be good. You can see this process goes from being very sketchy to being less sketchy to being more or less consolidated, as you see in both or all three of these. But in each case, the follow through is what I call the proof. You put out some points, you put out some values and get the effects, and then you see how things pull together. And when they're pulled together into a longer line, for example, like in here now, you can check yourself. You can see how you did. I'm only showing you this one because this is a demonstration I did. I don't know why this is so washed out compared to this, or if this is just a dark photograph of that. But because lots of areas here just look funny, that's way too dark compared to this. And normally when I do demonstrations, I'm after the light effect, so I think something's not quite right here. But in any case, you can see how much finish is in the start. But that's just enough for it to hold its place as that, not as a thing, but as that look in that spot. And I need this point. You see, that's the most significant point you can grab onto. It's very sharp, it's very pointed, it's very dramatic in separating the great light from the great dark. It's just very useful left and right in all sorts of ways. So, and the color should be there. So I don't know what the story is with the difference in the lack of color here. So I think it's just a bad shot. But you can see that it's based on putting some spots around, spots, fur spots, these various spots. And then the idea of testing the spots to get the light effects, to see if the values are right. Well, that's where the sharpness of the edge plus the contrast has to produce your effect. And every time you go to a place like that, even if it's just a placeholder, maybe it's the back of the neck or hair, you want to produce that light effect to the degree that so that requires you to have the edge right and the value contrast right. But so there's the look of nature in a piecemeal way, but then this thing has a size to whatever else is already out there, et cetera, et cetera. So anything you can do to put the time in to consolidate, to verify the rightness of their relationship is going to be a great planting of the foot. It gives solidity to your base, to your lay-in. I keep wanting to just turn this. It's not working today. So that I showed you a minute ago, I think, and I think you probably can see what I mean in all these ways. The mentality is always going to be about an exploratory first line, which I call the scout. You send that out, and then you come back with pulling it together, pulling it into a longer line. So this wouldn't have been a long line continuously. It would have been set up as points. It would have been, maybe the first thing we drew on this might have been something to establish the location of this in relation to this, or something about this. Who knows? But it wouldn't have been just simply a long continuous line. And you can see that it's a broken up line too. So that gives you evidence about how I attached further and further stuff to it. By the time you get this thing here valuistically to look like this, it begins to be very useful. You can then see that it's absolutely right or not right to this. That's all you're looking for. That's what you want. You want to show up the errors. You don't want it to sit there and just be happily right. We don't build on happily right. We actually build on exploration, the search. So for us to say, I believe this linearly, goes to this, that way, blah, 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 it's just discussion. So when you bring the mass to this and the mass to this, and they begin to have the look of nature like this does to this, then we can say, oh, and now is this transferable? Now does this feel like it is of a piece? That's the general unity of it that we're always trying to maintain. In the first marks that are just purely linear, right through, but especially after you get values on there and you're producing a silhouette. So the silhouette is the look of nature. And it has to have enough articulation to actually feel like itself. Articulation, bump count articulation, edge quality, value contrast articulation. That's where one of the things like flat values is so helpful. You can speculate about the location of this way for a minute, but it won't be long before this whole thing needs to be pulled together as one, much like you see obviously here. Okay, I'm going to stop at that, Ilya. So get back to me. Let's see what else we have to say. What else you have to bring to us to make this even clearer. If other people have questions relating to this, if you would get back to me too, just put it under the image wherever you read, under in the comments section, under the video, and I'll try to incorporate those too. If you have other questions regarding what I'm saying here now. Okay, first try at a at a Zoom visit from one of you guys. It isn't the first one, is it? We've done it several times. Ben or whoever else out there. So, but out of the blue, though, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we have done this, but I'm trying to keep it coming. All right. Okay, that's it for today, and I look forward to all the comments and stuff. Thank you again for your donations, Linda, Jen, and for everybody's comments, donations. All the stuff I can't remember, likes, subscriptions. Keep it coming. We're at a nice level. I think we're at 14,000 or so subscriptions now. I am so delighted to be here for you, and I'm so pleased at how many times I get this, that you've given me tools I've never had before, and it's enabling and bringing hope back to me. I'm delighted. I could not be more delighted. All right, next time.